What happened? My grandson, Keith, had left for the hotel where his company's entrance ceremony was being held, only to come back home about 30 minutes later. His face was clouded, and his steps were slow and heavy. Nothing. It's clearly not nothing. Would you talk to your grandpa about it? Keith kept his lips tightly sealed, but as I kept pressing, he finally told me what had happened. Apparently, the HR department had mistakenly reserved the hotel for the wrong time and changed the ceremony schedule the day before. Keith never received that notification. They said, "You probably just overslept and are lying about not getting the notice," and called me irresponsible. My wife tried to comfort him, gently placing a hand on his back, but suddenly, her hand froze. Her face grew paler and paler. Wondering what was going on, I moved behind Keith and immediately understood the reason. There it was, a sheet of A4 paper taped to his back. Seeing it made my blood boil. Don't worry. Grandpa's going to take care of this. I know exactly who's responsible. If we don't pull him from his position now, he could bring this whole company down. My name is Howard Smith, 65 years old. Up until age 60, I was the president of a major snack manufacturer. We specialized in rice snacks, but with changing times, our sales had dipped for a while. Then, a rice flour cookie we launched became a big hit. And the business recovered. Thanks to that success, I was able to retire on my own terms rather than being forced out. And I left the company in the hands of a trusted team member. Now, as chairman, I live peacefully with my wife and grandson. To my delight, that grandson, Keith, expressed his desire to join our company. He wanted to bring smiles to children's faces, just like he'd experienced when he enjoyed the treats we produced. Bringing smiles to many children aligns perfectly with our company's mission statement. I couldn't have been happier to hear such words from my beloved grandson. Wanting to rely solely on his own merits, Keith applied through the normal selection process and successfully earned an offer. I didn't make any recommendations on his behalf. With our common surname, Smith, no one realized he was my grandson during the hiring process. Today was his big day, the company's entrance ceremony. Okay, Grandpa, I'm off. Take care and enjoy yourself. Enjoy myself? At the entrance ceremony? I just hope I don't say something awkward from nerves. My wife and I saw him off, dressed in his brand new suit he still wasn't used to wearing. After the ceremony, there would be a welcoming reception. As my wife and I started to discuss what we'd have for lunch ourselves, we suddenly heard the door. I'm back. Keith had returned, barely half an hour later. His face was dark, his steps heavy. What could have happened to make Keith look so defeated? I felt a surge of anger. I almost demanded an explanation out of sheer frustration, but I softened my tone as much as I could, trying to keep calm. What happened? Nothing. It's clearly not nothing. Can't you tell Grandpa what's going on? Keith kept his mouth tightly shut, but after persistent questioning, he finally told me the whole story. I tried to get on the shuttle bus from the station, but it never showed up. Our house is a 5-minute walk from the station, and the hotel where the ceremony was held is about a 10-minute drive from there. Keith had left early enough to reach the station 10 minutes before the scheduled pickup. However, the bus didn't arrive, and not a single fellow newcomer was in sight. Feeling something was off, he called a few new hires he'd exchanged contact info with, but no one responded. He then called the company directly, only to be hit with the shocking truth. HR had mistakenly booked the hotel for the wrong time and changed the ceremony schedule the day before. With everyone already in the ceremony, none of his co-workers could check their phones. Even though Keith explained that he hadn't received any notice, no one believed him, so he took a taxi to the venue. When he explained the situation to the staff at the door, they still refused to let him in. They didn't let you in? Why not? They said, "You probably overslept and are just pretending you didn't get the notice," and called me irresponsible. I was speechless. Such an unprofessional response was shocking. It wasn't about Keith, Calling someone irresponsible without hearing them out is simply unacceptable for any employee. So, I guess it looks like I just skipped my own entrance ceremony. They must think I'm unreliable now. My wife gently placed a hand on his back to comfort him, but then her hand suddenly stopped. Her face grew paler and paler. Wondering what was going on, I moved behind Keith and immediately understood the reason. There, taped to his back, was a sheet of A4 paper. Seeing it made my anger boil over. What's wrong? Trying not to let him see, I carefully peeled the paper off. Scrawled across it were mocking words calling him useless. Grandpa's going to take care of this. Thank you, but really, you don't have to. I'd rather not have everyone know I'm your grandson. I'll prove myself starting tomorrow. This isn't just about you. If they treat one person like this, others will suffer too. Who did this? Keith stubbornly refused to tell me, but I have more experience in the workplace. I managed to persuade him and identified the employee who had made the harsh comment to Keith. With Keith in tow, I headed straight to the hotel where the ceremony was held. Well, look who's back, the rookie who missed his own ceremony. Standing in front of the entrance, a man sneered at Keith. Oh, you brought Grandpa along? Good for you. Beside him, a young woman mocked Keith as though she were talking to a child. Long time no see, Kevin. However, the moment I said that, the expression on Kevin's face, the head of human resources, froze. Why are you here? Kevin had always been problematic. He had excellent sales figures but was notorious for his arrogance toward junior employees while constantly flattering his superiors. When I was CEO, no amount of pressure from other executives could make me let him lead a team. But after I retired, it seemed they'd promoted him. When I first heard his name and title from Keith, I was genuinely stunned. The woman beside him must have joined the company after I stepped down. She was whispering, "Who is this?" clearly unaware of who I was. This young man is my grandson, Kevin. You'll let us in, won't you? Of course. I'll escort you both inside immediately. Kevin snapped to attention as if saluting and directed the young woman to guide Keith inside. So, you were the one who sent Keith home, weren't you? My deepest apologies. I thought I had notified everyone, so I assumed he was just making excuses for being late. Even if it were an excuse, it's unacceptable to call a new employee irresponsible. On top of that, you're the head of HR. I'll be conducting an internal review, and disciplinary action may follow. Kevin's face went blank at my stern words. Sir, I don't always act this way. It's just that, well, my son was joining the company today, and I got carried away. Maybe a little overconfident. Oh, is that so? You don't want disciplinary action with your son joining, I take it? I placed my hands on his shoulders. Now, tell me, who's that woman? From the handwriting on the paper taped to Keith's back, it seemed likely she was responsible. Judging by her behavior, I had little doubt it was her doing. She's my subordinate, Madison. And what's your relationship with her? Sweat began to pour down Kevin's face. Relationship? I'm not sure what you mean. Not a professional one, clearly. How about it? You don't have to tell me, but if you don't, I'll have no choice but to start a formal investigation. Kevin finally gave in and confessed that he was involved in an adult relationship with her. So, you've divorced in the past 5 years, then? Well, not exactly, it's more of an in-between status. In-between? Which is it? At my insistence, Kevin admitted that he was still on good terms with his wife and had never even considered divorce. Despite seeing Madison on the side. Since you've been honest, I'll let you go for today. Thank you. I'll never forget this kindness. I left the event floor through one of the side doors. Not to truly leave, of course. I circled back through the hotel's main floor and requested to speak with Keller, the general manager. If Kevin remains head of HR, the company's in serious trouble. I needed to secure hard evidence to remove him from his position. I could press further, using his relationship with Madison as leverage, but that might allow him to make a comeback once things cool down. So, I contacted Michelle, my secretary, to probe from another angle while I persuaded Keller, the general manager I know, to lend me a uniform. With it, I personally infiltrated the venue. The time had come for the reception. The ceremony hall had shifted to an adjacent room, and everyone, minus a few, seemed to be enjoying themselves. Hey, you're pretty bold, eating here when you couldn't even make it on time. A young man, who seemed to be a peer, put his arm around Keith's shoulder. Kyle. One of the senior staff nearby told me to eat up, so I think it'd be rude not to. Fair enough. Come over here, then. Kyle walked Keith to a table, then grabbed a chair from a line along the wall. I watched curiously as he set a large serving platter in front of Keith. Although the food was buffet style, Kyle had brought the entire platter. Eat it all. You're supposed to have a big appetite, right? I couldn't possibly eat all this. Besides, other people probably want some too. Don't like the sushi? I could swap it out for something else if you'd like. The man leaned in closer to Keith, who looked completely at a loss. Don't make a fuss, or I'll tell my dad. I think even someone like you can remember I'm the son of the head of HR, right? Resigned, Keith quietly began eating the sushi. I had to admit, Kevin's influence on his son was quite impressive. Spotting Kevin alone in a quieter moment, I approached him. Kevin. There's a message for you from the front desk. Dressed in uniform, I played the role of a hotel staff member. A message? Why would they leave a message at the desk when I've got my phone on me? They were very insistent on delivering it directly, from your Chairman Smith. It took Kevin a moment to realize that the staff member standing in front of him was actually me. Mr. Smith. I thought you'd already left. I remembered something I needed to take care of. Look over there. Kevin nearly fainted at the sight of his son forcing Keith to eat excessively. This is a welcome party for new employees. Have some common sense. It was surprising to hear Kevin even mention the word common sense. Stop that useless son of yours. But don't let on that he's my grandson. Understood. Kevin rushed across the room with determination. What do you think you're doing? Dad. I was just teaching this guy a lesson for getting too cocky. Disciplining employees is HR's job. You're a new hire yourself, so don't act like you're in charge. He had likely grown up being completely validated by his father. Kyle looked at Kevin with an expression of disbelief. Fine. You want me to stop, right? I'll stop. That's right. For the sake of my future, stop right now. Kevin had just felt relieved when Kyle deliberately tipped over a large platter of sushi onto the floor. Oops, looks like I slipped while trying to clean up. You can handle it. It seemed that Kyle had no intention of backing down. He tried to make Keith take care of it. Are you all right, sir? I approached Kyle from behind, maintaining my role as a staff member. Who are you? I'm with the venue staff. I'll take care of the food. Please continue enjoying yourselves. Keith noticed me and tried to assist, but I gestured subtly for him to hold back. I got down on my hands and knees on the fine carpet, picking up every last grain of rice. I'll help. Kevin, now flustered, began to follow my lead. Why are you helping, Dad? Let the hotel staff handle it. It's their job to cater to customers and do whatever we say. In a low voice, I leaned toward Kevin. They say children learn by example. Do you treat restaurant staff like this too? Of course not. My son just can't stand it when things don't go his way. Kevin's hands were shaking, and he kept missing grains of rice. Ever since training, you've been overly idealistic and creepy. With a sneer, Kyle closed the distance between him and Keith. Making kids smile? You sound like some children's TV host. What's wrong with wanting to make kids smile? Isn't that how this company began? Now you're bringing the company into this? Have you lost your mind? Kevin's face quickly grew pale. It was only natural, considering it was as if his own son had confessed to wrongdoing. Armed with some fresh information I'd gotten from Michelle earlier, I turned to Kyle. Have you ever actually looked at your company's website? Kyle was taken aback by the sudden change in the hotel staff's demeanor. Who do you think you are, talking down to me like that? Our company spends a fortune here. I could have my dad stop doing business with this hotel. Then I'll make sure your father can't pull something like that. I stood up, grabbed Kyle's arm with my rice-covered hand. Gross. Let go. Gross? So this is how you educate your son, letting him call his own company's chairman gross? I directed the question to Kevin, but he didn't respond. He was too preoccupied with quickly coming up with an excuse to protect himself, leaving no time to listen. What? Chairman? Seriously, does this hotel employ old men who can't even communicate properly? I figured it was about time, so I pulled up the image that had been sent to my phone. This is a record of a certain money transfer. Do you know what the money was for? Kyle glanced at the name on the transfer and seemed to realize immediately what it was about. I don't know. Then, answer me this: what is our company's mission statement? It's a question we always ask in executive interviews. There's no way you wouldn't know. Kyle said nothing. He must have realized that saying the wrong thing would end everything for him. If you don't answer, I'll assume you don't know. I just forgot, that's all. Forgot? That's strange. I glanced over at Keith. You just said it yourself a moment ago, didn't you? To bring smiles to as many children as possible. That's our company's mission. I forced Kevin, still kneeling on the floor, to stand up. It seems your son doesn't know our mission statement. I wonder why. My son said something so impressive in the interview that the board couldn't help but be impressed. Even the other executives praised him. Let's say that's true. Then how do you explain this image? The next image I displayed was a series of messages. It was a conversation between Kevin and one of the executives, the same man associated with the money transfer. So you paid $1,000 to make sure your son got hired, huh? I took a deep breath, trying to calm my anger, but I couldn't hold it back. What was the head of HR thinking? You shameless disgrace. I'm so sorry. While everyone in the room watched us intently, one woman was trying to sneak out quietly. It was Madison. Madison. I have proof you were involved in this, too. Don't even think about running. I couldn't go against Kevin. He threatened to spread my embarrassing photos if I didn't cooperate. She said in a frail voice, as if about to cry. It seemed she was trying to garner some sympathy, but Kyle wasn't having it. Hey, Madison. You told me when I was still in college that you'd make sure I got hired because you liked my face. Don't pretend you weren't the one leading the charge, only to try and save yourself now. What, Madison? No way. I only dated Madison because I liked her face, too. We both knew it was just for fun, so I didn't mind that she was still involved with my dad. That's all it was. Kevin was devastated, now fully aware that he and his son had been involved with the same woman. You remember that photo from my coming-of-age ceremony that you showed Madison? Turns out she liked it so much that she even waited for me at the university. I wish you hadn't shown it to her. This was beyond unbearable. I'll leave the three of you to deal with this yourselves. You'll have plenty of time to talk things over once you've left the company. Later, all three of them left the company, officially as voluntary resignations. Although it was meant to keep things quiet. Someone in HR who had a grudge against Kevin leaked the details of their departure to neighboring major firms. At every networking event attended by executives from various companies, I would hear, "They applied here, but we turned them down." I couldn't shake a bad feeling about all of it. We should have done this from the start. "Mr. Kennedy, please, let the three of us back into the company." When I was suddenly summoned by President Kennedy, I arrived to find Kevin and the others there. Apparently, they hadn't been able to secure new jobs and had been lingering at the entrance, refusing to leave until they met with him. Kennedy, the current president, is neither my son nor a relative. My son went to college in Tokyo with dreams of starting his own business, later securing a job in the city. Within a few years, he branched out on his own and is now successfully managing his own company. Kennedy and I don't just lack a close relationship, we're practically rivals. The three of them probably thought turning to him would somehow work in their favor. While I prioritize bringing joy to children regardless of cost, Kennedy is a strict realist. We rarely see eye to eye on anything. "Mr. Kennedy, aren't you and Mr. Smith like cats and dogs? If you let us back in, it'd be the ultimate way to get under his skin. Don't you think?" Madison, hoping to get closer to Kennedy, unbuttoned her shirt down to the third button and tried to make a move. "Sure, we may not be on the best terms. But you know I'm a realist, right?" "Of course. I'm confident in my sales skills. Realistically, I'm a valuable asset, aren't I? It was only because I was in HR that things didn't work out. Put me in charge of sales this time. I'm a top-notch graduate from a prestigious university. Even as a new hire, I can deliver results right away. Let's get this old guy out of the company." Kennedy smiled slightly. They took his reaction as a sign they might be able to return to the company. Waiting eagerly for his next words, they watched him with hopeful faces. "If it came down to choosing between you three or Mr. Smith, I'd have to go with him. After all, his grandson is crucial to this company." Just when they thought they were about to claw their way back up, they felt like they'd been pushed off a cliff and into despair. "You're aware, aren't you? The rice flour cookies that helped revive our business, that was his idea." Just when I was starting to feel like I'd reached my limit, I asked Keith what kind of sweets were trending lately. He told me. "I'm really into rice flour treats, but I wish they were more affordable and easier to get." The cookies inspired by his idea became a hit, especially praised by parents of children with wheat allergies. With the product's success, we expanded it into a series, making it one of our flagship items. We needed someone with an eye for trends and a good sense of taste. Plus, having the founder's grandson join with the same passion as his grandfather provides a perfect backstory. If he creates another hit product, the media will be all over it. No way am I letting that kind of talent slip through my fingers. As for the three who were so quickly cut off, I decided to tell them what I hadn't had the chance to say before. "You dragged me into your twisted web of relationships, and it distracted me for a moment. But listen, rice is a valuable raw material for our company. Neither people who would throw rice to the ground nor their parents who raised them to be like that have any place here." As the three remained frozen in place, Kennedy looked over at me with a glint of amusement. "What, they threw rice on the ground? Wish I'd seen that." "Please don't joke about things like that, even in jest. Kennedy has no use for social gatherings, he routinely avoids them, including company parties. Even at the annual orientation ceremony, he leaves as soon as he's done with his speech. Had he been present at that moment, things would have probably gotten even messier." I was grateful he hadn't been there. Curious about what happened to those three later on, I asked Michelle to look into it, and found they were in an unexpected place. All three, even Madison, ended up working at Kevin's wife's company. Kevin's wife had taken over her father's construction business. Madison initially resisted working at the same company as her affair partner's wife, but she had leaned on Kevin from the start. Barely doing any actual work. Since she couldn't find another man in power to rely on, she reluctantly agreed to stay on. Though they tried to keep their relationship secret, someone had tipped off Kevin's wife. Knowing everything, she hired them anyway, intending to teach her husband and his lover a lesson and to re-educate her son. She put them to work not in the office, but out in the field. It was clear that none of the three were cut out for manual labor. When Kennedy heard the story, he went to the construction site to capture the scene on video. Amused as they were repeatedly yelled at by a supervisor. I can only hope that this experience reminded them of a childhood lesson to never do to others what you wouldn't want done to yourself. So, Keith, are you enjoying working at the company? About 6 months had passed since he joined the company. I had heard something from Kennedy, so I brought it up with Keith over dinner. Well, actually, there's a project I'm working on that might get approved soon. I can't share details yet, but if it goes through, I'll buy some for you, Grandpa. Is that so? I'll be looking forward to it. In truth, I already knew all about the project, but I pretended not to, wanting to see the joy on his face. Keith is working on developing a modern version of rice crackers, aiming to release a product that represents our style. He plans to launch a spiced version geared toward adults to first capture the attention of parents, eventually expanding the line to include products for children. Kennedy gave it his strong approval, saying it was sure to be a hit, considering it sounded like a moneymaker. I'll protect this company that Grandpa started from a humble candy store. Hearing such words from my promising grandson, my wife and I felt determined to stay around for as long as possible.